Okay, we're doing the next section here of the Anarchist Handbook. Oh, it looks like I got a bit of sun today. We're probably going to be doing chapters 4 and 5. So this next one in chapter 4 is Pierre, Joseph, and I never, you know me and names, I mangle them. So Proudhon, Proudhon. I mean, I've seen the name in print a million times. I'm familiar that they're anarchists from the 1800s. Don't know very much else, so we're finding out in this chapter. So the little introduction that Michael Miles gives is Proudhon, I have no idea, can be regarded as the first modern intellectual to refer to himself as an anarchist, and he is the source of what followed philosophically. It is he who coined the expression, property is theft, boo. Proudhon's brand of anarchism he chose to call mutualism, which was regarded as a compromise of sorts between anarchism and socialism. He would argue for a revolution that resulted in a socialist society where everyone worked voluntarily for the benefit of all. And, you know, that's just contra to human nature. So there is good stuff in here, though, because even people you fundamentally disagree with, you know, there is some commonality. So let's go over this. He says, all men are born free and equal. Society is therefore by nature self-governing, i.e. ungovernable, and he who lays his hand on me to govern me is a usurper and tyrant, my declared enemy. But this idea of equality did not appear in the earliest phases of society. I always get suspicious, though, when people who say things like property is theft, what they mean by equality, and I have a feeling they mean like equity. But let's see. Social revolution is the end. Political revolution, i.e. the transference of authority, is the means, which simply means give us power of life and death over your persons and property, and we will make you free. What kings and priests have repeated for 6,000 years. This is what he's saying, like his enemies say. But he says political revolution, that is the abolition of authority among men, is the end, and social revolution is the means, and that there can be no liberty for citizens, order for societies, or union among producers until there be no more parties, no more authority, absolute liberty of the individual and the citizen. So, actually, you know, I don't agree with his ultimate conclusion, but I do agree with him that the means to political revolution is social revolution. Politics is a lagging indicator. It says the socialists have fallen into the same error as the radicals. Saint Simon, Fourier, Owen, Cabet, Louis Blanc are all for an organization of labor by means of the state, or by capital, or by some other form of authority, instead of teaching the people to organize themselves and to appeal to their own reason and experience. They say, give us power. They are utopians, like the despot. It is utopian to think there'll never be a hierarchy. It's just literally impossible. Governments are the scourges of God to discipline the world. For them to create liberty would be to destroy themselves. Absolutely agree with that. Look at the countries that are the freest. Are they not those where the power of government is the most restricted, where people generally take the initiative? The United States of America, for instance, remember he's talking in the mid-1800s, England, Switzerland, Holland, and those are the most enslaved, where the governing power is the best organized and the strongest. Ourselves, for example. And yet we are always complaining of not being governed and asking for a stronger arm at the helm of state. The church, like an affectionate mother, came first and said, everything for the people, but all by the prince. Then came the monarchy, everything for the people, but all by the prince. Next, the doctrinaires or liberals, everything for the people, but all by the middle class. The radicals, though changing the formula, have retained the principle, everything for the people, but all by the government. Always the same communism, the same governmentalism. Who will then say everything for the people and everything by the people, even the government? So there really wasn't that much objectionable in here. I don't think anarchism means the abolition of authority. I think it means the abolition of unchosen authority, or unnatural authority. There will be people who have a natural authority because they have more of a skill. The smarter person is going to have more authority, not more rights over someone who's less intelligent. In the field of, let's just say, singing, the person with natural musical ability will have more authority over those who have none. It's just natural. Unchosen political authority is my view of anarchism. Are you truly free if you can't choose a ruler? I would say not. Okay, chapter 5, Herbert Spencer. Now, I remember reading this. There was a lot interesting in here, and it's a much longer chapter than the other one. So, he's from 1851, and it says, though largely forgotten today, Herbert Spencer was one of the preeminent British intellectuals of the latter half of the 19th century. It was he, and not Darwin, who coined the term survival of the fittest. Did not know that. By which he meant that in any environment, the fittest will survive, not necessarily that they should. Decades later, Murray Rothbard reportedly called Social Statics, and that's the name of the book where this essay came from, the greatest single work of libertarian political philosophy ever written. Wow, that's high praise. Yet Spencer was no anarchist. Then why? Oh, okay. And had the following chapter, so the chapter that's in this book, quietly removed from Social Statics when it was republished years later. Anarchists later found the excise chapter and republished it far and wide after his death. So apparently he didn't consider himself an anarchist, had a chapter that anarchists loved, and had it removed from his book. And then the anarchists, wily little devils that they are, republished it later. So the right to ignore the state. Well, I like that. But remember what he's saying, and I remember reading it going, that doesn't sound very anarchist. There are things to sympathetic to, but remember, Herbert did not consider himself an anarchist. It says, if every man has the freedom to do all that he wills, provided he infringes not the equal freedom of any other man, then he is free to drop connection with the state. Absolutely. To relinquish its protection and to refuse paying towards its support. Relinquish its protection, of course, as long as he's allowed to defend himself. It is self-evident that in so behaving, he in no way trenches upon the liberty of others. For his position is a passive one, and whilst passive, he cannot become an aggressor. It is equally self-evident that he cannot be compelled to continue one of a political corporation without a breach of the moral law, seeing that citizenship involves payment of taxes, and the taking away of a man's property against his will is an infringement of his rights. Government being simply an agent employed in common by a number of individuals to secure them certain advantages. The very nature of the connection implies that it's for each to say whether he will employ such an agent or not. Well and good, as long as you can take care of things another way or yourself. It says, a good check upon that sentiment of power worship which still misleads us by magnifying the prerogatives of constitutional governments as it once did of monarchs. And he's saying, referring to natural law is such a check. They who maintain that the people are the only legitimate source of power, that legislative authority is not original but but deputed, cannot deny the right to ignore the state without entangling themselves in an absurdity. And most people today do. Someone I was engaging with on Twitter, in fact, was the height of absurdity. 4. If legislative authority is deputed, it follows that those from whom it proceeds are the masters of those on whom it is conferred. It follows further that as masters, they confer the said authority voluntarily, and this implies that they may give or withhold it as they please. Of the political superstitions lately alluded to, none is so universally diffused as the notions that majorities are omnipotent. Ain't that the truth? Says, so however insignificant the minority and however trifling the proposed trespass against their rights, no such trespass is permissible. And I agree with him there, contrary to the author in that book I really love, The Problem of Political Authority, Michael Huemer, who does think there are times where such trespass is permissible. It says, by no process can coercion be made equitable. The freest form of government is only the least objectionable form. The rule of the many by the few we call tyranny. The rule of the few by the many is tyranny also, only of a less intense kind. You shall do as we will and not as you will, is in either case the declaration. And if the 100 make it to the 99 instead of the 99 to the 100, it is only a fraction less immoral. In affirming that a man may not be taxed unless he has directly or indirectly given his consent, it affirms that he may refuse to be so taxed, and to refuse to be taxed is to cut all connection with the state. Perhaps it will be said that this consent is not a specific but a general one, and that the citizen is understood to have assented to everything his representative may do when he voted for him. But suppose he did not vote for him, and on the contrary did all in his power to get elected someone holding opposite views. What then? The reply will probably be that by taking part in such an election, he tacitly agreed to abide by the decision of the majority. But what if he did not vote at all? Why then can he not then justly complain of any tax, seeing that he made no protest against its opposition? So curiously enough, it seems that he gave his consent in whatever way he acted, whether he said yes or whether he said no or whether he remained neuter. A rather awkward doctrine, this. I like that. It says, men do indeed speak of civil and religious liberty as different things, but this distinction is quite arbitrary. They are part of the same whole and cannot philosophically be separated. And absolutely agree, though to us that might seem a bit out of place, but we have to remember this was written in the 1800s, so much more religious people. So that is that for those two chapters. I actually have gone ahead and highlighted the next two, but we're going to do those in a separate video. But just to give you a little teaser, it is Josiah Warren and Mikhail Bakunin. And I will then do those as soon as I can. Bye-bye.